Good morning and welcome to Rising. Thank you all for tuning in. Well, the studio is not quite as bright today because Jessica is back at home rather than sitting next to me, but it's nice to see you anyway, Jessica.
It is good to see you as well. Yes, I've escaped the city of DC for the time being. And there's still construction happening near me, Robbie. There's a bridge being built thanks to the infrastructure bill. So hopefully we won't hear any of that. But thanks, Joe Biden.
Well, hopefully they build it and it stays functional and does not collapse. That would be very good because we hope you are able to come across it and return to DC sometime. Why don't you tell us what we're talking about today?
Yes, so we have CNN and Politico reporting that Trump may back out of this September 10th debate. The issue appears to be over what's known as hot mics. The Harris team wants the mics on throughout the debate, while Team Trump prefers a muted microphone. Trump's team said they had agreed to a debate under the exact terms of the CNN debate with Biden and Trump. But meanwhile, over $500 million is how much Kamala Harris's campaign has said it's raised since Harris launched her campaign last month. And of that $541 million total, to be exact, Team Harris announced Sunday that it raked in $82 million during the week of the Democratic National Convention. Per her team, this haul marks a record for any campaign in history for this time span. And also, the Trump campaign said the Republican nominee added $139 million in July, bringing its war chest to $327 million as of August 1st. While Trump seems to be lagging in the money race, latest polling shows he's fallen since Harris entered the race.
Well, many polls show Harris ahead. One Fairleigh Dickinson University survey published on Friday, Harris had a 7-point lead over Trump nationally there. The New York Times presidential election tracker shows she's leading nationally with 49% to Trump's 46%. ActiVote, which polled between August 15th and 23rd, shows Harris has a 5-point lead, and Angus Reid Global shows that she's edging Trump by 5 percentage points. It's important to note, however, Democratic pollsters are warning that the party should be wary. In 2016 polls, there was injected confidence that in the party that Hillary Clinton, of course, would beat Trump. Now we know who won that election. And in 2020, Biden beat Trump by a much slimmer margin than the polling suggested. So now pollsters are warning the Democrats not to repeat those same mistakes this election cycle. In Biden's 2020 pollster told Politico about the curveballs each election cycle, summing up, quote, "Something's going to happen in 2024. You and I right now don't know what that is." Yes, it's always important to remember that Biden was up like 7 points over Trump nationally at various points, and then his margin in the end, especially in the swing states, was this close. So even if she's up a little bit, and then of course Hillary Clinton was up a little bit and ended up losing. Now, what do you make of this debate news, Jessica? Because it sounds to me like, let me get this straight. The protocols for the CNN debate between Trump and Biden, I thought were perfect. I praised that debate. Everybody seems to think it was a great debate. It was better the candidates were not interrupting each other because their mics got cut. That was what Biden wanted for that debate, and actually it seemed like it worked out fine. Now Kamala Harris is saying she doesn't want that. She wants the mics on so that they can cut each other off. Maybe she hopes that Donald Trump talks over her or something and that turns people off. I think it should be the way it was last time because the way it was last time was perfect. No?
Yeah, Robbie, if the mics are off when one person's speaking, how can Kamala Harris get her signature line in "I'm speaking"?
Right.
It's just ridiculous. It's really, I don't think, necessary to have both mics on. No one wants to watch a debate where they're talking over each other and you can't make out what they're saying. The whole point is they're giving their policy plans for like the whole country, for the highest office in the federal government. We kind of want to hear what they're saying. And so if this is, the end all be all for the Harris campaign, I can't imagine it is for this debate, that they're going to die on this hill of having the mics on. But if it is, that's a bit ridiculous. And so they're going to negotiate the terms of the debate. I think the CNN debate went very well. We covered it. And despite Biden not being able to string a sentence together very well, it was a well put on debate. The questions were fair. They allowed each guy to answer for their records. There were some questions specific to their personal records while in office. Maybe we'll expect to see that again. But I think the mics being off when the other guy was speaking was what made it such a success, because it could have devolved into chaos.
Yeah, because I totally agree with that. The problem when the mics are on and they're both, if they both try to talk over each other, then the moderators have to get involved to cut one person off, and then that seems like the moderators are intervening when that's their job in that situation. The mics being off allowed, someone to make their statement, and then you got the rebuttal from the other person. We tested it. It was a really good debate. It revealed that Joe Biden was not at all up to the task of running for president again. And so now we have Kamala. She shouldn't be fearing it's exactly as you said. It sounds like they're trying to artificially construct the I am speaking moment or something. That seems just totally ridiculous. I think they should. I hope they work this out and they agree to debate. Now, of course, there was also some reporting that Donald Trump doesn't want to do a debate with ABC because he doesn't like. And I think an interview they did with Tom Cotton where they seemed very biased and very unfair. Again, CNN did a great job, and now there's a different, and I wouldn't say that if it weren't the case. We criticize CNN all the time, but Dana Bash and Jake Tapper did a good job. They should just do the debate with them again. Now that it's a different candidate in the mix, that would be fine with me. Or one with them and one with Fox, or one with them and ABC and Fox, and we've not had an opportunity ever for them to debate each other. It's a new candidate, so let's have 2 or 3 debates again.
Yeah, I think they see Trump preparing with Tulsi Gabbard. Who knows if she's preparing the same attack line she had against Harris for Donald Trump, but maybe changed a little bit so he's not hitting her from the left. Although I don't think he really cares about the political spectrum in any meaningful way. He just wants to hit back at his opponent. But I do think that maybe it's a strategy for the Harris campaign when he starts talking about her record or framing it as in some way untrue, which I wouldn't put it past him. He's done that before. They want to give her a chance to interrupt and just say, that's not true. And so letting him talk for a minute straight and having her own everything the Biden administration did, and maybe misframing some of their policy decisions or the impact of, their tax plan, for example. They don't want him to be able to explain something that's not true. There were a lot of lies he told in the first debate. And I can see a world where they want her to be able to say that's not true while he's saying it. So there's not these clips of him making these points in the debate. And then her speaking time is just point for point how what he's saying is not true. But it seems like Trump's not going to agree to that. So she's going to just have to practice that. She has $541 million. She can afford to spend some time in debate prep and pay some high-powered surrogates to go around on the trail for her, pay influencers to make the case on social media, which is something that I think is going to be a bigger part of this election. So many people don't answer the door when it's knocked. You got to meet people where they're at. People are online. I think this is going to be an election that's won in part based on the media they create in-house in the campaigns. And so interested to see how they'll spend their money. But debate prep is no doubt going to have to be a big part of it.
I mean, yeah, if Donald Trump says things that Kamala Harris thinks are inaccurate or untrue or lies, then during her time to speak, she can explain why those things were not true, and Donald Trump gets to do the same. I mean, if the mics are on, Donald Trump can interrupt her, and which I think sounds like that's what she wants. And you can have constructive debates under those circumstances. They've taken place before. When you and I argue, nobody mutes the other person's mic when the other person is speaking. I think you and I have more respect for each other than Kamala Harris and Donald Trump do. So you can have a debate under those circumstances, but we just had one that went pretty well with the mic muting, and if she can't, she can keep her thoughts straight and explain why she doesn't like why she thinks what he's saying is wrong. I don't know if this is like some lack of confidence she's projecting in her own debatability, because while she did do a very good job speaking, obviously at the convention, the concern with her is when she has to think. When she's not just reading prepared remarks, she has to think on her feet. She has to take answers questions, even like slightly hostile questions from the media. Not that she's gotten any of those in a million years now. She says she doesn't sound the way Joe Biden sounded, but she kind of start saying those vague, circular things about the passage of time and the changing of change and that sort of thing. So I guess we'll see if any of that emerges. Really do hope they work something out. It would be certainly to America's detriment not to have any further debates. There's never been a bit of debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, one of which will be the next president of the United States. More Rising right after this. The CEO of Telegram, Pavel Durov, has been arrested in France. French authorities arrested Durov, alleging that his platform has been used for money laundering, drug trafficking, and other offenses. Now, for context, Telegram is one of the world's largest encrypted messaging apps with 900 million users. The New York Times writes that the app has become a, quote, haven for disinformation, far-right extremism, and other harmful content, as if hosting such content was illegal. Durov's arrest at a French airport by that nation's cybersecurity and anti-fraud units is an important challenge for free speech globally. Durov was born in Russia and has French citizenship. The Russian embassy in France said in a statement that it asked French authorities for more details on the arrest. Meanwhile, Telegram said in a statement, quote, Telegram abides by EU laws, including the Digital Services Act. Its moderation is within industry standards and constantly improving. Telegram CEO Pavel Durov has nothing to hide, travels frequently in Europe. It is absurd to claim that a platform or its owners are responsible for abuses of that platform. We're awaiting a prompt resolution of this situation. While Durov's lawyer called the charges, quote, absolutely ridiculous.
Now, many have reacted to this news online. Rumble CEO Chris Pavlovski tweeted, quote, France has threatened Rumble, and now they've crossed a red line by arresting Telegram CEO Pavel Durov, reportedly for not censoring speech. Rumble will not stand for this behavior and will use every legal means available to fight for freedom of expression, a universal human right. We are currently fighting in the courts of France, and we hope for Pavel Durov's immediate release. Elon Musk tweeted this picture showing a line crossed out of TikTok and Telegram, with X and Rumble listed as next. Tucker Carlson wrote, quote, Pavel Durov left Russia when the government tried to control his media company, Telegram. But in the end, it wasn't Putin who arrested him for allowing the public to exercise free speech. It was a Western country, a Biden administration ally, and enthusiastic NATO member that locked him away. And Edward Snowden said, quote, the arrest of Durov is an assault on the basic human rights of speech and association. I am surprised and deeply saddened that Macron has descended to the level of taking hostages as a means for gaining access to private communications. It lowers not only France, but the world. So this is huge. Of course, it's not just, the censoring speech that he's been arrested for. It's, offenses including stolen goods, money laundering, fraud, terrorism, and the supply of drugs. So a lot going on here, but we've known justice systems to be weaponized. If it's about something else, they get them on other charges. The police can pull someone over. And if you start asking questions as to why they want your information and whether or not, they need to search the vehicle, they say it smells like weed or something. And if you give any indication that you're resisting their orders, now they can get you on that charge, even if you're well within your rights to deny them access to search your vehicle. So I don't know if it's something like that. We're going to see how this plays out in the courts, but it seems to me that from Snowden to Elon Musk, people are saying this is absolutely a free speech concern.
This is a huge free speech concern. I mean, think about, and what you just said about the Telegram is being used, for illegal activity. Well, that is that the owner is responsible for that? I mean, we actually in the U.S. we have a law mandating that is not the case. That you couldn't put Mark Zuckerberg in jail if criminals had a Facebook group or something. You go after those people. If robbers are going to rob a bank and they're communicating with themselves with each other on their cell phones, is like we don't haul the CEO of Verizon Wireless to jail. This is ludicrous that they're taking the position that he is responsible for the speech on the platform. Again, in the U.S., this is what Section 230 specifically prevents. It's why it's a good law. It stops the people who are moderating the platform. It protects them from responsibility for policing bad or illegal speech. They should not have to do that because that would violate all of our free speech rules. Because you can't have the platform if the moderator or the owner, the president has to police every single word uttered on the platform. It's not going to work that way. We're going to end up criminalizing everybody's speech, which is not surprisingly to me at all, maybe exactly what France wants to do. You know, this coming so quickly following Terry Breton, the EU bureaucrat who threatened Elon Musk a week or two ago for the interview that he was going to do with Donald Trump, and what if there's misinformation there? These are European bureaucrats are asserting these very broad new rights to censor speech. And again, in the New York Times, what it says there, you know, it is one thing if it's terrorism or violence or crime of that nature. Maybe, you know, there is some responsibility to police those sorts of things. What they're actually worried about is disinformation and far-right speech, which France is, and the European Union is trying to make illegal, but here in the U.S. we recognize is very, very different. That you have the right to say things that are incorrect. You don't have the right, yes, to organize terroristic violence on a social media site, and maybe the owner has to do something about that. But the other bottom line here is that this platform is end-to-end encrypted. So it's much harder to get a warrant and say, well, turn over these communications. They don't have them, which is a good thing because this will protect us or give us more protection from the government, reading our direct messages to each other when everything goes end-to-end encrypted. That'll be better for privacy and free speech. It'll be worse for nosy, bureaucratic busybodies.
Right. And the question becomes, is the CEO of Apple going to be arrested for messages exchanged over iMessage? Is
Right.
Mark Zuckerberg going to get arrested for any criminal activity happening via messages and organizing on WhatsApp? There's a shortage of access to messaging that is secure and safe online. Telegram has been one of the most essential messaging platforms I've communicated with pro-Palestine activists on.
Exactly.
They've organized rallies and events and sit-ins in Congress on the Telegram messaging app. So this idea that the government will retaliate against what Telegram has been used for by attacking their CEO, it just doesn't sit right with me. It feels wrong. When WhatsApp began, or rather was purchased by Mark Zuckerberg and began being run by the Meta company, everyone was like, well, that's it. We're not going to use that anymore. People moved on to Signal and now onto Telegram. And so people want encrypted messaging that is secure, that cannot be read by a third party or be hacked or be obtained by the US government. People have some right to privacy. And if they want to use our messaging apps to convict people of crimes, that's an unreasonable search and seizure. They have to have probable cause to explore what we're talking about in a private setting. They can't just read our messages. That's not how the Constitution intends our civil liberties to exist in the world. Of course, this is happening in France, but I think it does raise, some questions for everyone who uses Telegram in the United States.
Yeah, and consider Pavel Durov's life. This is someone who left Russia. He's not some pro-Putin sympathetic person. He wanted to escape Russia's censorious authoritarian government, and now he gets arrested not by Russians, but by the French, by the bastion of Enlightenment thought, where so many of our traditions of democracy and debate and the philosophy of free speech and civil liberties, classical liberalism, comes out of places in Europe like France and Britain, etc. The very places now where there is this level of leadership, of political leaders who want to criminalize speech. Again, they might, there is some underlying justification, of course, to combating actual violent crime and terrorism to the extent it's being organized on social media. We do have, for instance, some exceptions under our laws in the U.S. where the platforms are required to do some policing of, for instance, underage sexual conduct. And, that's fine. They have to police copyright infringement, that kind of thing. Fine, sure, there are exceptions. But mostly what they're citing here in their efforts to imprison this man is that there's too much disinformation on the platform. We've seen, often we've seen efforts to go after so-called disinformation that turns out it's just a legitimate disagreement, or it's not foreign bots, that kind of thing. It has been such a slippery slope that we're coming to this place where this is what the Europeans are doing, and it makes me very, very grateful for the protections for free speech we have in America. But, we have Facebook and Twitter are American companies, and whether they're going to be able to keep operating in places in Europe, given this new enforcement of the Digital Services Act by Terry Breton and now in France, is going to be an open question. So I think this is very, very bad. Right now it's mostly kind of vaguely right-wing people who are raising the most, sounding the alarm bells, Tucker Carlson, Elon Musk, CEO of Rumble, etc. But this is absolutely something that should not be partisan whatsoever. As you pointed out, you've used this app to communicate with Palestinians. That left people absolutely have used this app to agitate for human rights violations all over the world. So this is absolutely something that should be an issue that everyone who has a principled commitment to free speech should be raising. So we will definitely continue to follow this case on the show and paying very, very close attention to it. Not good at all. More rising right after this. Fresh off making an implicit endorsement of Donald Trump and calling on his supporters to vote for Trump in the swing states, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. told Fox News Sunday that Trump is preparing to announce that more Democrats will be joining his campaign. Let's watch.
President Trump is going to make a series of announcements about other Democrats who are joining his campaign. And I want to make America healthy again, and so does President Trump.
After Kennedy made his announcement on Friday, Trump shared a post on Truth Social from another user on X that reads, RFK Jr. just took the stage at Trump's rally in Arizona to raucous applause and asked a simple question: when have the people in government been trying to censor what you can say ever ended up on the right side of history? If you believe in free speech, you have to vote Trump. There's speculation that RFK Jr. may become part of a Trump administration. In the interview on Sunday, Acre Shannon Bream asked this.
No, I wouldn't dismantle them. I would change the focus, and I would end the corruption. Right now, 75% of FDA's budget is coming from pharmaceutical companies. That is a perverse incentive. In NIH, scientists and officials in NIH who work on drug development, who incubate drugs for the pharmaceutical company, get to collect lifetime royalties from those products. These are regulators. They're supposed to be looking for problems in those products. We have these agencies that have become sock puppets for the industries they're supposed to regulate. So they're not really interested in public health. Everybody, the most profitable thing today in America is a sick child. Everybody's making money. The hospitals are making money. The pharmaceutical companies are making money. Even the insurance companies make money. And we need to end those perverse incentives. We need to get the corruption out of FDA, out of NIH, out of CDC, and make them function as they're supposed to function, which is to protect public health and particularly children's health.
Trump's running mate, Ohio Senator J.D. Vance, responded to RFK's suspension of his campaign on Meet the Press this weekend.
Robert F. Kennedy, the big news yesterday.
Very big news.
He suspended his campaign, announced he's endorsing Donald Trump. He is also known as someone who has blamed vaccines for autism, antidepressants for school shootings, and recently said, quote, he won't take sides on what happened on 9/11. Do you have any hesitation about accepting his endorsement?
No, Kristen, I don't, because we're going to disagree on issues, right? There are things that Robert Kennedy has said that I disagree with. I'm sure there are things that he said, or that I've said, that he's going to disagree with. But I think what his endorsement represents is that Donald J. Trump's Republican Party is a big tent party.
RFK himself shared that his wife, Cheryl Hines, wasn't very happy with his decision, writing on X, I am so grateful to my amazing wife, Cheryl, for her unconditional love, as I made a political decision with which she is very uncomfortable. I wish this also also for the country, love, and unity, even in the face of disagreement. We will need that in coming times. The Kennedy clan is also upset with JFK Jr.'s choice. His sister Carrie strongly condemned her brother's endorsement of Trump.
I think if my dad were alive today, the real Robert Kennedy would have detested almost everything Donald Trump represents. I'm outraged and disgusted by my brother's gaudy and obscene embrace of Donald Trump. And I completely disavow and separate and dissociate myself from Robert Kennedy Jr. in this flagrant and inexplicable effort to desecrate and trample and set fire to my father's memory.
You know, can I say something here? I really, really do not like watching political figures, family members, disavow them, denounce them, etc. over political disagreements. I mean, you can't, I've got a brother, and if he was a serial killer, I don't think I would be able to denounce and disavow him. Like, it's just, you don't have to say anything. I think it's good to watch families quietly support one another, even if they don't agree. You know, no one asked for her opinion, and he's not even running now, and he's endorsed Donald Trump. I shouldn't say that. Of course, mainstream media did ask for her opinion. She didn't have to give it, and it bothers me, but you know what? Maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I think it's different if someone were to like go to my sister working her shift at the restaurant and was like, what do you think of the Jessica Burbank saying this? I think it's very different when it's a political family, right? They're Kennedys. Yeah. They've had presidents and attorney generals serve at the highest level in the United States. And so I think because it's such a political family, people want to hear what they have to say. There's demand for it, and they feel an obligation to speak out because it's such a political family. But the family's been in the media a lot. It turns out Kick Kennedy, the tabloids say, is spending a lot of time with Ben Affleck, Robbie. He's going through a divorce with J-Lo, who recently told the tabloids there's a darkness in him that no one else can fix. But Kick Kennedy has now, because she's in the press, not just because of her father, but because of Ben Affleck as well, there's a story that's resurfaced from a 2012 interview that is too interesting not to share. They were at the beach and went together with a chainsaw. This is Kick Kennedy and her father, RFK Jr., and they sawed off the head of a beached whale and strapped it to the roof of their car with bungee cords and drove it 5 hours home with people honking and flipping them off. She said they wore plastic bags on their heads with mouth holes cut because it smelled so horrible and blood was pouring through the windows. You also have happening right now, Robbie, is the Swifties realizing that Connor Kennedy, Taylor Swift's ex-dad, is RFK Jr. So lots of interesting things happening in the Kennedy clan beyond this interview.
Yeah, look, he should stop transporting dead animals. No disagreement there. But you know, look, this is a controversial family. This is a family who's had members in it. Obviously, some kind of curse follows the family, the amount of tragedies they've befallen, and those are very sad. But, you know, like Ted Kennedy, who was a respected figure in the Senate, who ran for president, who got a woman killed after he drove the car off the bridge with her inside it and left the scene and didn't say anything about it to the authorities till the next day, if I recall the facts exactly right. Did that generate thunderous denunciation? Did his family say, I renounce you utterly, I separate myself from you, you are reprehensible for killing someone, for getting a woman killed? No, it's for endorsing Donald Trump. I guess that's the highest crime one can possibly imagine in the liberal imagination, is supporting Donald Trump for president, or thinking that Donald Trump is better than Kamala Harris, right? Because he has plenty of disagreements with Donald Trump. He's continued to say that. J.D. Vance admits as much, says they're not on the same page on everything, not at all. But what RFK Jr. really cares about is censorship and this health crisis in the country. He thinks Donald Trump would be better on those issues. He says Kamala Harris wasn't even interested in having a conversation with him about those issues. And in fact, Democratic activists worked to keep him off the ballot. So he is supporting Trump. Interestingly, he is calling on people to vote for Trump instead of him. If you're in one of the 10 swing states, he's trying to get his name off the ballots there. He'll be on the ballot elsewhere, and he says you can, vote for him if you're not in a closely contested state. We'll see if this makes a difference in the race. I think it certainly will be at least a small boon to Trump. And as I've said repeatedly, it's a very, very close election. It's going to come down to thousands of votes in just a few states. So it could end up helping him.
Yeah, and poor Cheryl Hines, her life has changed forever. She went from hanging out at nice dinners in Los Angeles with celebrities and the Kennedy clan to now Jordan Peterson, JD Vance. I think JD Vance, it's rich. He was the one asked that question as someone who has called Donald Trump Hitler. JD Vance is totally, we can work with people we disagree with. As long as it gives us political capital, we're totally cool with it. But people on Twitter, the website formerly known as Twitter, now called X, many people are saying, Robbie, that he should replace JD Vance as the running mate. I saw people's Trump-Pence signs where Pence has Kennedy written over it. It seems that a lot of the people that are enthusiastic MAGA supporters are happy with RFK Jr. coming over. But there was a bit of a faux pas where I guess Robert F. Kennedy Jr. never watched all of that. But 90s kids are just surprised that the message he's going with is make America healthy again. He posted a photo of him shaking Trump's hand with that over it, and it said Maha, M-A-H-A, which Amanda Bynes famously said repeatedly, playing this character of an older woman on Nick at Night, late night Nickelodeon television. And so whenever a 90s kid hears Maha, they think of Amanda Bynes with fake teeth in. And so I don't think that phrase will stick, or at least it's going to be a ridiculous one among the zillennials. Maha is just not the same as MAGA. It's just not working. When you have an acronym that people already associate with something else, it's not going to work. So that was very funny to see.
We will continue to follow any updates on the RFK Jr. endorsement. More Rising right after this. Criminal justice and crime have emerged as key issues in this year's presidential election. It is clear that the Democrats have moved away from some of the language they have used in 2020 when the Black Lives Movement was at its apex. The 2024 party platform, on the other hand, says we need to fund the police, not defund the police. Stark shift from the activist messaging of the last election. Also calls for more police on the streets, nor does it express opposition to the death penalty, the first time since 2012. This is all a marked change.
Today we want to discuss one case. It's the case of Crystal Kaiser, the Black teenager shot and killed a 34-year-old white man named Randall Voller III, who sexually abused and trafficked her when she was just 16 years old. She killed him when she was 17. Last week, a Wisconsin judge sentenced her to 11 years in prison with another 5 under supervision. That's after a petition to drop all charges garnered 1.5 million signatures. And the Wisconsin Supreme Court ruled in 2022 that her lawyers could argue the crime was justified because she was trafficked by him and was the victim of his kidnapping. So, what does this case say about the justice system? It reminds me of one of my favorite movies of all time, Robbie. You usually talk about movies. I have a movie, A Time to Kill. It's with Matthew McConaughey, Sandra Bullock's in it, and a man in the South, a Black man, had his daughter attacked and brutally raped by a group of men, and he, in a rage, killed, allegedly, the man who did it, or one of the men who did it. And the jury found him not guilty. And I think there's some kind of sort of insanity plea that makes a lot of sense when one of your close loved ones is murdered or has something horrible done to them. Something just takes over instinctually to want to, do something about it. And I think this is one of the cases where 17 years old, after going through this, was she in her right mind? But what would the implication of an insanity plea here be? Because many people would say you're in your right mind if you want to do something like that. to a person who abused you and who held you hostage, trafficked you. It kind of makes sense. It feels like self-defense to some extent. And so it's a very interesting case where people are grappling with, well, maybe morals and the law are not the same thing.
Yeah, so I read, there was I think an opinion piece in the New York Times. It was an opinion piece about this woman, Crystal Kaiser, written by an opinion writer named Rachel Louise Snyder. I questioned a lot of the assertions in this piece. There was a lot of claims about racial and gender-based imbalance and how these crimes are prosecuted that I wasn't sure about. The kind of sex trafficking catch-all. I mean, she was basically doing prostitution with this person in a pimp role. I don't think that's a reason to kill someone. You should just get yourself out of it. But the instigating event when she killed him, it wasn't like revenge or some kind of escape, but he was assaulting her. He was on top of her. He was trying to rape her. Again, I don't know if these details are accurate, but that's what is alleged in this article. In which case, then I would say it's not a like philosophically self-defense. It's just literal self-defense. He was attacking her, and excuse me, we have some construction starting above me. I don't know if you can hear that. Anyway, it just
Still
sounds like
building
normal
bridge,
self-defense to me.
Yeah, I do think there's a case to be made for self-defense in this case, but also it is common in this kind of, pimp scenario that a lot of the women that work for a man are subjected to give him sex. It's kind of like an exchange for services. And so I really don't understand how 11 years plus 5 years of supervision makes sense as punishment for this crime when you have people like Kyle Rittenhouse getting off scot-free. I just think the application of the law, especially in terms of self-defense, should be more consistent, especially across race.
Well,
and yeah, I think people feel a sense of justice. I saw a sign around if a woman is raped and she can be charged with murder if she gets pregnant and decides to abort the child, what incentive does she have to just not murder her rapist if she's going to jail for murder anyway, if she doesn't want to carry the child? And so there's a lot of interesting questions around justice and what it means to kill someone who abused you in today's day and age. That sign is becoming increasingly popular at a lot of these protect the right to abortion, people being against the anti-choice crowd rallies.
Right. I mean, you can't kill someone just for abusing you. You can you can go to the police and the police can charge them with something. You can't. I don't want some kind of vigilante system. You bring up Kyle Rittenhouse, who was correctly, in my view, I actually did a lot of radars on it on the time, correctly found innocent for shooting people in self-defense who were attacking him, one of the survivors testifying during the trial that he was that person was the initiator and that Kyle Rittenhouse was responding. So again, just as that I think ended up being a much clearer cut self-defense case than it was made out to be in the media before the trial got underway, and then we saw a lot of the evidence and testimony that it really was self-defense. Again, I don't know exactly what the details are here. This is a very frankly biased to my mind telling of the facts, but if this person was attacking her, again, not just like he had abused her at some point in the past, because if that was the case, then you should go to the police, but was actually in the process of physically assaulting her, so yes, then self-defense is justified. I think it's helpful to avoid overcomplicating issues or bringing in like race and gender in the entire system. It seems in this case it should have been self-defense. Now, she ended up not going to trial and pleading guilty. This is a problem with the criminal justice system because she didn't want to face the risk of, like, this happens all the time because everybody gets overcharged, and then instead of actually going to trial where you would try to plead your case in front of a jury and have to convince them that it's there's a beyond a reasonable doubt that you're guilty. Nobody risks that because the mandatory minimum sentencing is so egregious. You can't do that. So instead they take these plea deals for lesser but significant still amounts of jail time. I think that whole process is very bad and deeply in need of reform. It should be judges and juries determining guilt and the appropriate punishment for people accused of crimes, not legislators who are writing these, who are saying you can't. There's a mandatory minimum. You can't consider any exogenous factors. You couldn't say, like, maybe this would be a case where they'd say, well, it was the killing, her actions were too extreme given the situation she was in, where maybe he was threatening or being physical with her some way, but she didn't have the right to kill him. That might be something a jury or a judge would determine, where then they would give you some sentence that was appropriate to that reality, that you were justified in taking some measure to protect yourself, but not going all the way and committing murder, and then they could give some sentence commensurate with that. But instead, what we're having is, well, I'm not even going to trial because the mandatory minimum, because that judgment is being taken away from the judge and the jury. They wouldn't get to do that, so I can't risk it, so I have to plead guilty to however much time she got. That's a problem.
Yeah, it's a huge problem in the criminal justice system. You'll have detectives give false information, misleading information, saying the other defendants or co-conspirators already spoke, and if you just confess now and take this plea deal, you're going to get less time, you're going to get a better deal if you tell us everything you know. And then we've had witnesses give false testimony and recant it, and the testimony they've given has kept people in prison. And so it's a system that completely needs to change in that regard. As far as sentencing goes, some of the progressive leaning criminal justice reform experts and research firms, including one that I worked at, you have these funders who come in with an agenda of what they want to research. And the project I was working on was pretty good. It was assessing the effect of cash bail on individuals. But I looked into the funder, the Laura and John Arnold Foundation, and they tend to fund research that has to do with sentencing. And doing further research into what that looks like, I found that there's all kinds of people that are assessing the use of artificial intelligence to make decisions for arraignments. Because there's so much leeway a judge has for the same crime, we're seeing very different circumstances that a defendant faces before they've ever been convicted of a crime. They've just been charged, whether or not they're held in jail during that time, what cash bail is set at. And so the mandatory minimums are definitely bad. But then there's other areas of the justice system where the judge has far too much leeway to decide how to handle a case. And for the same exact crime, someone could be kept in jail for months, lose their job, lose their apartment, their life could fall apart, while someone else who's accused of the very same crime is let out on a very small number of dollars paid in cash bail. And so just assessing the different circumstances, there's got to be some consistency, but it can't be the kind of consistency where a situation like this happens and the victim who's 17 years old and has been abused has no leeway.
All right, we'll be back with more Rising right after this. President Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris were noticeably absent from a commemoration ceremony remembering the 13 American soldiers who were killed in the Afghanistan exit in 2021. Former President Donald Trump, however, was there. He started off the morning honoring the 13 American soldiers who lost their lives in Afghanistan during the military pullout that President Biden ordered just 3 years ago. Trump blasted Biden, who did not attend the wreath-laying ceremony at Arlington Cemetery. Let's watch.
Today, we had a celebration of some great people, some great people who passed away, who were killed in the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, because we had an incompetent president with incompetent people leading it, and every one of those people should have been fired. He never fires anybody. Where is our president? We don't even have a president. We have a fascist person running who's incompetent, and we have a president who's not even around. He went to California for a vacation because they threw him essentially out of the party.
So this is not the first time Trump has accused the Biden-Harris administration of complete incompetence in the pullout, which did result in the deaths of those American soldiers who are remembered for their bravery and for serving their country. Look, I think you, many people watching and in this country on both sides of the political spectrum understood that the continued American presence in Afghanistan was not doing them any good or us any good and did need to come to an end. That was something Donald Trump believed in as he set a timetable for the withdrawal of American troops. But when it actually came to pass, it was a rushed, chaotic bungle that resulted in people getting killed and has come under extreme scrutiny, even from those who otherwise think that, yes, we did absolutely need to end our nation-building project in that country, in the Middle East more broadly, but not like that.
Yeah. Do you guys all talk to each other and say, we're not going to call it the Biden administration anymore? We will only say Biden and Harris administration? Because it was like Kamala wasn't seen as that involved in not getting along with Joe Biden and excluded from meetings, and it was just Biden administration. But then as soon as she became the presumptive nominee, it was just Biden Harris administration, just in lockstep with that messaging, always naming both. Listen, if Donald Trump wants to run on the fact that Biden's operation to pull out of Afghanistan, a war that should have never been entered, that Biden did not enter, a war that's complicated by the CIA backing and funding the Mujahideen for many years that ended up becoming the Taliban. It's a very hard and unstable situation there in Afghanistan. And sometimes the best thing to do is to just leave. So if Trump had a better way to pull out of Afghanistan, my question is, why didn't he do it?
Well, he created the conditions for the pullout, but then the pullout actually happened under Biden Harris. Look, you want me to just call it the Biden administration? That's fine. I'll do that. If Kamala Harris explains what her views on that situation were, if she says, you know, I was against us getting out and I said we shouldn't have done that and no one listened to me, then fine. She doesn't have to own that policy. I think that would be fascinating to hear her actually criticize. The reason we're assuming continuity, assuming that she's in lockstep with what her boss was doing, is because she's not distinguished herself in any meaningful way from it, has not taken the opportunity to elucidate how her views might be different. And I'm just sick of Kamala Harris trying to have it both ways, of being both like the candidate of being presented as the candidate of historic change, newness, something different, something bold, something progressive, while having been the vice president and ostensibly having co-signed the policies for the last 4 years. If she doesn't agree with them, she just wasn't listened to, okay, explain that to us. That might do her some good, actually, because a lot of those policies are very, very, very unpopular. But I don't think she should get to have it both ways.
I think that Donald Trump didn't do anything to prepare for the pullout of Afghanistan. The idea that he gave Biden a layup to pull out of Afghanistan, what did he do? I don't know a single policy plan he had, a single action he took as commander in chief that facilitated the pulling out of Afghanistan. If he thought it could be done in a smooth way, he should have done it. And so this idea that he's going to attend this ceremony 3 years after it happened to honor the soldiers and make a big deal that Biden's not there. Okay, Biden is the president. He's very busy. He can't be at every single ceremony there is. Neither can Harris. She's busy campaigning. Trump hasn't gone to every single honorary ceremony for every single military operation that went badly in the country's history. It's very obvious he's going to this one so that he can remind everyone that pulling out of Afghanistan resulted in a huge media frenzy about how horrible it was, when really there's no smooth way to end a never-ending war.
I mean, you say he didn't do anything to prepare for the pullout. I'm not sure that's true. It was under Trump that they made the deal to get a substantial reduction in forces in 2020 and then a total removal of forces in 2021. So that would be under Biden, and so then that did end up happening, but the way it happened. Look, if you want to take the position that it was always going to be messy and that's what comes of American empire, et cetera, I mean, fine, but that's not what Donald Trump's saying. Donald Trump is saying it could have been done differently and there wouldn't have been lives lost. And, as always, when he says, oh, if I was president, this never would have gone wrong, fair. Don't believe him if you don't want to, or press him to explain in more detail. I think that would be better. I think it would be great for Donald Trump to do more interviews and to explain how his policies differ, especially on foreign policy. Well, you're saying that Russian invasion of Ukraine never would have happened. Well, why? Just because Putin's afraid to cross you, or Hamas is afraid to cross you, or the Taliban, or whoever it is, then fine, maybe it's true. I don't know. He can explain it in more detail. I think that would be beneficial. I also think it would be beneficial for Kamala Harris to explain where her points of disagreement with the Biden administration, if there are any, were for the last several years. And then she doesn't have to be responsible for them, I guess. But she wants to keep it vague. They both want to keep it vague, frankly. They both don't want to be, held accountable for things that have gone wrong, serious questions the American people have that are going to make them actually take sides in some important high-stakes political arguments, discussions. They want to just, not answer specific questions and just rally their base, I guess, whether that's, the MAGA people on the right side or mainstream elite forces on the progressive side that are just going to let them get away with anything.
I think it's a lot easier for Donald Trump to be in his first term and say, you know what, we have a plan to pull out. It's just going to happen after re-election so that it can't jeopardize my chances of getting re-election and being held against me. He did that because he knew it would be messy and he knew it would become a point of contention during a political campaign. So listen, he might have mapped out a plan for this to happen in 2021, but he absolutely did that for political reasons. It would be messy if it happened in 2020 before his presidency ended, or if it happened in 2021 and Biden was the president. He's making all of these political moves and really trying to play the public against, the information that they've been presented by the media and by him. But I think people are smart enough to realize this pullout from Afghanistan was going to be messy no matter what. And Trump could have done it in 2020. And it's a part of his political campaign to ensure that positive things don't happen for Biden during an election year and negative things don't happen for him during an election year. Whereas instead, what the Biden administration has done is do the messy thing, because sometimes the messy thing is the right thing. And the American people want to end never-ending wars. They want to have a COVID stimulus that prevents a recession and rebuilds America through the CHIPS Act and Infrastructure Act. They want action on immigration, even if it's done in a bipartisan way and it's not everything their party wants and it's imperfect and it could risk re-election. Trump is someone who stood in the way of things getting done for the American people. And if he wants to make a meal out of the Afghanistan thing, he can. But I just really, for the reasons I said, don't see it landing with the American people.
More Rising right after this.
Border crossings have been going down, and new numbers show the influx of people seeking asylum has been halved. According to the New York Times, citing the latest figure from the Department of Homeland Security, the significant decrease appears linked to Biden's sweeping restriction on asylum seekers imposed in June. This could be a problem for Donald Trump, who has sought to make immigration a political handicap for his opponent. Making matters worse, Trump stood before a segment of a wall at the southern border that was sanctioned by none other than his predecessor, Barack Obama. And then, speaking from Michigan a few days before, he seemed to have tamped down his usual rhetoric about immigrants. Let's watch.
Just so you understand, I am not a radical at all. I'm just a common sense person that was successful in what I did because of the same thing. We are going to let people, and we want people to come into our country. A lot of people. We need them. We need them for jobs. We need them for everything. We want people to come in, but they have to come in through a process. They have to come in legally.
Now, that's quite different than Trump's quote about ruining the blood of the country. Trump has targeted Kamala Harris for her role in failing to secure the border, but his own actions on the border seem conflicting. Listen to how Republican Senator James Lankford, one of the architects of the Dash border bill, told Fox News' Neil Cavuto a while back. Let's listen.
It's your colleagues in your party, sir, who torpedoed this, who didn't get the facts right on what you just outlined was in that measure. They killed it. Ironically, not Democrats.
Right. It was, and it was painful to be able to watch. It got stirred up in all the presidential politics, and several of my colleagues started looking for ways. After President Trump said, don't fix anything during the presidential election. It's the single biggest issue during the election. Don't resolve this. We'll resolve it next year. Quite a few of my colleagues backed up, looked for a reason to be able to shoot against it, and then walked away. I get that. That's a decision everybody makes in it. My issue is if we're pursuing everything, we very often end up with nothing. If we're pursuing someone coming later to fix it, later seems to never come. When we have a moment to fix things, we should fix as many things as we can then come back later and fix the rest.
Now, I saw that Fox News anchor going a bit viral for some of his interviews over the weekend, but I think that that exchange is quite telling. I mean, we know Mitch McConnell was talking about how this was sort of torpedoed after he's one of the architects of the bill, the Republican leader in the Senate. I think that it speaks to Donald Trump's true, care in politics, and it's to promote himself, sometimes at the expense of the country. He said that this bipartisan border security bill, if passed under a Biden administration, would hurt his election chances because it would make them look good, and that's why we shouldn't do it. And then proposed his support of HR2, which is a much more intense immigration bill. It includes language that would require TSA to collect biometrics of anyone who is traveling on a plane who has forgotten their ID that day or has been flagged as suspicious. And there's various criteria that's counted there. I think that there are a lot of things in that bill that make it an extreme bill, a radical bill, and to support HR2 versus a bipartisan bill that had Republican support before Trump said he didn't want it to go through. I think it shows that he definitely cares more about, his personal success and his personal political campaign than actually about the border and what happens there.
Well, he's a political candidate, so of course he cares more about his own re-election efforts than anything else. I think that's true. I think that was true of Joe Biden. I think that was true of Kamala Harris. I think they're all political actors trying to obtain more political power. But, listen to what he said there, that he said he's not a radical, that he supports immigration and immigrants, he sounded like me. He said things I've said every time we address this issue, that we need immigrants to come in to help build things in this country, to contribute meaningfully and productively to our economy. It just has to be done legal and in an orderly way, not with people streaming across the border, not with people abusing the asylum process, which Joe Biden reforming was a valid thing. It's been the weakest link in the immigration chain. So you've had people flooding it because it's the easiest way to get into the country. We should not have that. We should have immigration reform so that people who want to work here can come here and do that and have it be above board and pay taxes and not be collecting more in welfare than they're paying in. That's what makes native citizens, citizens of the U.S. mad, is the idea that immigrants might be taking more out of the system than they're paying in. Well, let's just find a way for them to have a legal status, and then that won't be an issue. And then you won't have people coming over in appalling conditions, beholden to drug mules and traffickers and all that kind of thing. If it just gets fixed. And Trump sounded perfectly reasonable there, and maybe the Republican Party is only going to play ball if Trump is president. That's an indictment of them. You can hold them accountable at the ballot box if you want, but the fact remains that if we look at public polling, overwhelmingly Americans trust Donald Trump more on immigration than the Biden-Harris administration.
Well, I don't know. I look at the stimulus package that was passed under Trump. That's something that Democrats in Congress and Joe Biden could have said, you know what, block his stimulus package. Let's make him look like he's torpedoing the economy.
I wish
they
didn't
had.
Do that. I wish
they didn't
had.
do that. You wish they had done that?
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't support any stimulus or redistribution or any of that.
Okay.
I would have wanted to.
Yeah.
I would have dealt with the economic problems caused by the pandemic by not having lockdowns and mandates and everything else. But go ahead.
A lot of economists point to the stimulus as what prevented a recession thanks to the pandemic in the country. This was a $2 trillion package passed under Donald Trump that required the help of Democrats. You didn't have Joe Biden making calls asking that legislation to be blocked because he wanted to win in 2020, and he won anyway. Because I think at the end of the day, someone who cares about the country isn't going to block legislation that would help the American people in order to seek public office. But that is what Donald Trump does, and that's not something that's been done by his political opponents on the other side just because that's how politics is. That's not how politics is, and it's not how it should be, but it's how Trump plays the game. And so I think a lot of the American people that care about the border do see that Donald Trump's HR2 bill that he supported instead, that his aligned colleagues in Congress supported instead, is one that wouldn't work. It's one that didn't offer a legal path to citizenship. There was no expansion of access for people to be processed at the border. Then you had Joe Biden and Kamala Harris increase the amount of Border Patrol agents at the border so people could be legally processed. Instead, what Trump's HR 2 bill would do is impose fines on anyone who didn't go through the legal process. But we currently don't have the capacity to process the volume of people seeking to migrate to the United States. And so what does that leave them? Well, they're going to cross the border illegally to come into the United States because we don't have the capacity to process them. It's as simple as that. And so either you increase the capacity or you do what Donald Trump has done, which is impose these fines of $500 to over $1,000. And if they can't pay them, they're put in prison. And then at that point, the United States is funding their housing and food and water and the utilities at these prisons on the border. That's not really an effective path forward or a good use of public resources. So it's not even like Trump had this alternative bill that promised to be better for the country. HR 2 is a bill that even Republicans in Congress has said would be ineffective as compared to the bipartisan bill. And so I think this is really something that could cost him the election, the way he's tried to influence what the country does about immigration when he's not in office.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you on the part of that's housing immigrants in detention facilities does cost an extreme amount of money, is not an efficient use of this resource of immigrants, is a tremendous cost to the taxpayers. And I think even American citizens who are a little bit more hardline on immigration, like, do you want to be, you're right, paying for detention for these people, or they probably want to be sending them back and having just legal immigrants come in. So it's if resources are being put toward housing, detaining immigrants, I think a lot of people would rather put those resources toward processing more immigrants so that we know the people coming in are safe, don't have criminal backgrounds, and then they can work here and produce here, and have those checks go through more speedily would be a great improvement that either political party could manage if we cut bureaucracy and red tape and spend taxpayer dollars on ways that will make our country better instead of ways that are a waste of money. More rising right after this. In another blow to Boeing, NASA is choosing Elon Musk SpaceX to help bring home the 2 American astronauts stuck in space on a Boeing spacecraft. Now, the 2 astronauts, Suni Williams and Bill Nelson, have been stuck there in space for about 11 weeks following issues with Boeing's Starliner. Now, the mission was originally only supposed to last 8 days. Problems began when multiple of Starliner's reaction control thrusters failed. It's a very spacey sci-fi term, as it traveled to the International Space Station. Plus, the spacecraft's helium systems also started leaking.
Now, in a statement, NASA said, quote, the uncrewed return allows NASA and Boeing to continue gathering testing data on Starliner during its upcoming flight home, while also not accepting more risk than necessary for its crew. Wilmore and Williams, who flew the International Space Station in June aboard NASA's Boeing crew flight test, have been busy supporting station research, maintenance, and Starliner system testing and data analysis, among other activities. SpaceX's crew will launch no earlier than September 24th. So our tax dollars are going to good use. Elon Musk's engineers who work there at SpaceX as employees are paid by government dollars. SpaceX is primarily a government contractor. They've been paid with $15.3 billion in awarded contracts since 2003. I saw a very funny post on X that said, I hope my tax dollars are going well and there's some kind of romance happening up there or something. It's what I want my tax dollars to be used for. They can't just be up there in chaos, which is nice. We might get a nice Netflix special to come of this, Robbie.
Yeah, it's like that movie Passengers is what it makes me think of, which is a pretty interesting movie. But I will look, if you object to your tax dollars being spent on space stuff, that's fine. I object to my tax dollars being spent on just about anything, but they're up there, and NASA can't rescue them on their own. Federal government can't do anything about it on their own. Boeing is incompetent again, so who's coming to the rescue? Elon Musk. rapidly becoming one of the most hated men on the planet for the mainstream media and progressives and the left. But SpaceX is what's being relied on here to rescue these astronauts. I was reading a little bit more closely about the situation. So Boeing asserts that everything's fine. We could definitely get them back. No problems. But the NASA board that looked at the issue voted unanimously to say, no, we're going to go with Elon Musk now because this is not reliable. So it is another blow to Boeing at a time where a lot of people are looking at that company and saying, what the hell is going on with all of this incompetence?
No, I mean, it's fair to say that SpaceX would not exist without NASA. They bailed out SpaceX in 2008, and SpaceX is essentially the government. They're primarily a government contractor. So this idea that it's uniquely Elon Musk doing this, I mean, government dollars are paying engineers and astronauts at SpaceX to do their work. So I mean, Elon Musk isn't the one creating the rockets, nor flying the planes, nor fronting the Capitol. So I don't really see this as Elon Musk saving the day here. I do absolutely see this as another failure for Boeing. I really think Boeing's got to face some consequences for the failures of their airlines to be regulated properly, or rather the planes that are flown by the airlines to be regulated properly. You have pilots that are flying planes that you have whistleblowers saying should not be flown. And so I think it's time for a thorough investigation into Boeing's both spacecraft and aircraft. It's crazy they keep getting away with this.
Yeah, I fully support space developments in this sector of the economy being left to private industry, private exploration, rather than government subsidy. You know, you say this is a government, I mean, they're a contractor, right? The government wants to do this space stuff, for lack of a better term, and has contracted with Boeing for some of it, is contracting with SpaceX now for other aspects of it. If you want to take the position that the government shouldn't fund any of this and just get out of the business of space travel and leave it to the private sector, I'm fine with that. I absolutely do want to see development and innovation along this front. I want us to become a multi-planet species. We should colonize the moon and Mars, and that is what Elon Musk's stated goal is with SpaceX. So I, fully support private industry leading the way there. I don't think it's quite right to say that a contract means you're a government agency, but I don't disagree that the government spend our tax dollars on this or really anything else. We can just let the private industry find a market for it, and if there's a market for it, people will pay as they are paying, and it can take off that way.
Yeah, I mean, of course, SpaceX isn't a government agency, but they do primarily operate with government funds, $15.3 billion. That's just all to say crediting Elon Musk for this mission and saving the astronauts would be silly, given he's not an astronaut, nor is a space engineer, nor fronted the Capitol for this mission. So I just think it's silly that if he tries to take credit for it or people give him credit for it, it's just not giving credit where credit is due.
I guess I'm being a silly goose because I'm giving him some credit.
Yeah, I don't think he deserves it. I think the good engineers at SpaceX and the astronauts who fly with SpaceX and will be on the crew of that flight deserve all the credit in the world. And yeah, it sounds like they do believe, from the articles I've read about what's going on with this craft that was designed by Boeing, is that they do believe it can dock and redock successfully, and they do think that they could fly home on it. It's just that there would be less risk if they came aboard the SpaceX craft. And so I think that's great. It's probably much lower risk than the original, trips we took to the moon and space station initially, but it's good that we can make the crew that's going to space as safe as possible. It's got to be incredibly scary to go up there and be worried about coming back home. But a lot of the folks who write about this are like, oh, it's being totally blown out of the water, or it's out of proportion, because what we're experiencing now is a spacecraft that has demonstrated all of the abilities necessary to make the trip home. It's just because of these, failures in certain systems that have been mitigated that they're not going to take the risk, which is good. They should minimize risk as much as possible.
All right, more Rising right after this. Bill Maher called out CNN's Kaitlin Collins on the network's bias. Let's watch.
You made press because you were on Stephen Colbert's show, and he said something like, you guys at CNN just report the news straight, and the crowd burst into laughter. Look, I'm on CNN now. I guess we're on it right now. I mean, they show this show the next night. I don't know how we get away with it with all the, but they do, and all these dirty jokes. But I'm glad, and I'm a big rooter for CNN. But that tells you a lot, doesn't it? I mean, how do you guys think you are doing in that arena of like, this is a terribly divided country. We're not only politicized, a lot of people just hate the other side. And CNN, in my view, should be the place where both sides can watch. How do you think you're doing with that?
How is CNN is the place where both sides can watch. And I think, my show is evidence of that. We have lawmakers on from both parties.
Now, Maher also questioned Kamala Harris's lack of media appearances. Let's watch.
What do you think about the fact that Kamala doesn't talk to the press? In a way, I feel like it's more insulting than what Trump does. And Trump says you're the enemy of the people, which is pretty bad. But she's kind of saying I don't need you. I'm not talking to you. You don't matter. You're not relevant anymore. To me, that's even worse than I hate you. It's like I don't think about you.
I don't know if it's worse than denigrating the press on a daily basis, which is what Donald Trump did. I mean, I covered him in the White House every day as a correspondent. And, oftentimes to kind of, shake you if you were asking him a question, he would try to get into a personal argument with you or just deny or lie about, what you were asking about. And so I don't know if I would compare the two. I do think she should talk to the press. I think anyone who wants to have access to the nuclear codes should be willing to sit down and take questions. And we'd love to have her on the show.
I really appreciate Bill Maher's confusion from a technical standpoint of when and whether his show is on CNN and how it's connected as a host of a show that we're part of The Hill, and The Hill is owned by Nexstar, and we have News Nation as our sister company, and I can't keep anything straight, although we're happy to have the involvement of a lot of the folks over here, and we're going to be moving into the same space as them. We're going to have a new studio soon. It'll be really cool. That just is totally inside baseball resonated with me. But as to the matter of CNN being the network of that both sides can watch. If you look at the numbers, the network that both sides watch is Fox News. Fox has just as many Democrats watching it as these mainstream or liberal channels. The fact that the audience, even what's his face's audience that Kaitlin Collins was on, as he noted, laughed at the idea that CNN is unbiased and is a place that both sides are tuning in, which is a far cry from where it was when it launched, which is not to say that there isn't good reporting being done by the network or there aren't fair anchors. I've celebrated over and over again the effort they did hosting the first debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. So I'm not going to, by any means condemn the whole place, but I think it's perceived by viewers, whatever's left of them, to have gone astray from its mission somewhat.
Yeah, I mean, you did have MSNBC garnering much more viewers this time around than Fox did for the RNC, DNC coverage. You also had the RNC garnered about 25.4 million viewers, whereas the DNC this time around had 29.8, about 14% higher. So yeah, there's all kinds of people who hate watch Fox News. They clip up the segments so that they can debunk them and post them online for all of the boomers that want to watch more Fox News when they're not watching Fox News, as an attempt to inject some reality into their media consumption. So yeah, people on both sides watch Fox News. Are they watching it and thinking, yes, everything they say is true and good reporting? Absolutely not. Fox has become entertainment for people on both sides and for different reasons. Does that make it a good news channel? No. And so I think, it's interesting to see the amount of people tuning into the DNC and Kamala Harris as an indicator of where people stand politically, and they want to watch it on MSNBC. They're like, we're going to watch it with the libs. We're going to lib out and watch people who are happy about it. And so I think news is shifting and the country politically is shifting a little bit more towards positivity and hope. And Fox is still playing the hits, criticizing the tan suit, bringing up race and gender on a constant basis. And so I think less people want to watch that these days.
Bringing up race and gender on a constant basis. I mean, I think that's the boosters of Kamala Harris doing that on mainstream media. Look, you can disagree with the perspectives, the opinions of the opinion hosts on Fox, but the mainstream, and I disagree sometimes with some of them, depending on what it is. I think the reporting that goes on Fox is just as good, if not better, than a lot of other mainstream media organizations, and puts straight news reporting. It's not some of it is opinion. Plenty of it is opinion free, and the line is more clearly delineated, in my view, on Fox than it is on the other channels. But I also wanted to touch on their debate over, Maher saying Kamala is almost worse because while Donald Trump's attitude toward the mainstream media is, I hate you, her attitude is, I don't need you at all, and I'm not going to talk to you. And I think there is something to that, and the reason for it is because she perceives she doesn't need the media because they're being so positive toward her. They're boosting her. They're helping pull her over the finish line. They're giving her unbelievably favorable, fluffy coverage without her having to lift a finger. So why would she talk to them when they're just going to talk about all that joy being injected into the airwaves, into our brains, as you put out? That's what they're doing without her having to play ball at all with them. So why would she?
I mean, it's been 3 weeks. Again, we've talked about this before. The most recent sit-down interview Trump did with the media was with Elon Musk. Trump's sit-down interviews, he doesn't really speak to his policy plans anyway. I don't know why they're so obsessed with Kamala Harris sitting down with them. I mean, they're the media. They want the views for sure. But I mean, she's out doing campaign rallies all the time, talking about her vision. She answered questions with the press on the tarmac in between going to campaign rallies. This idea that she's not willing to answer questions, I just think it's silly. She's spending her time catching up on campaigning because she's joining the race so late. It's just the media being obsessed with the media, that we're the most important people and the questions of ours she answers are the most important. She's got a campaign to run. And of course, she's going to have press conferences as president. She's going to do sit-down interviews. But the idea that she needs to do one in the first few weeks of her campaign, why? I just don't understand why they're calling for that. It's not that she said she'll never talk to the press.
You think we have to elect her president before you have to vote for the bill to see what's in it? We have to have her as president before we're allowed to find out what she actually thinks about the issues?
Oh, she's released her economic policy plan. She's doing this on the campaign trail. The idea that she has to sit down with a figure on media and give their show views in order for them to be satisfied is a part of the poison of American media. She's giving her message directly to the people and her speeches are being aired. I mean, I know more about her economic policy plan than I do about Donald Trump's. And in fact, a lot of conservative commentators are spreading misinformation and attacking Kamala Harris's economic plans. So the idea that they can attack her plans and still don't know what they are doesn't make sense. Those two things can't be true at once.
Well, she got some criticism. In fact, she even got some mainstream criticism of her economic plans. Very polite, mild criticism that even some people making it then wanted to walk back for fear of offending, I don't know, the K-Hive or something. That's why I think it would be beneficial for her to sit down with a reporter who can say, well, this is your economic plan, but economists say this about it and that it's going to be bad. Actually, that just happened with J.D. Vance sat down for a mainstream interview, and he was asked about the tariffs plan, and the reporter was able to say that, tariffs are something virtually all economists say are bad for the economy, but you think tariffs are good? And he said, well, I think they're good for this reason. He was actually pressed on a policy, and there's no opportunity for that to happen with Kamala Harris, even though the stated policies have been politely, mildly criticized. Nobody wants to offend her, but I think that's why
it's just not true. I mean, outside of the DNC, there was a viral clip of her being asked about her policy plans on night one. So this idea that she's not taking questions about the media, specifically on her plans, just not true. She spoke on her plans. She was asked directly about them, specifically the price gouging plan and her plan on reducing rents. She spoke to the press about this and why these things will be good and how we should think about them. So this idea that she's not taking questions for the press, not talking to the press, they're just not true. And you can say it all you want, but people see the videos of her talking to the press. They saw the videos about her saying we need to look at the economy as a whole. And instead of, questioning how this will be bad for the economy, we need to think about the economy as a whole, and that price gouging will be good. I'm paraphrasing, but we can pull the clip up. She's talking to the press and answering specifically questions on her economic policy plan.
That does it for us today on Rising. Thank you all for turning in. We're just getting the week started. There's going to be a lot more news to come. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any of our content. And for those of you who like to listen while on the go, we're available anywhere you can get your podcast fix. See you back here tomorrow.
Bye, y'all.